Alright guys, I'm here back with a new video, and in this video, we're back talking about Australian Survivor, where we have the cast of the upcoming season, Heroes versus Villains, and here I'll be doing my cast assessment / reaction to it, and really, just everything about this preseason has just been weird, and everything about this season has been weird. Now, I did say in my cast speculation video that I was going to do this cast reaction video, and obviously I never got around to actually properly doing that, largely because, for some reason, this cast was just a mess, and we never got full confirmation on all of the returnees, at least from a verified, credible source. However, Network 10 has been releasing the names of the cast one a day over the last few weeks, and now we do have all 24 players. I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on the cast of Australian Survivor Heroes versus Villains, and I guess by the end make my winner pick. But before running through the cast, let's talk about general thoughts. And wow, what is this season? This is just bizarre. I already talked about this in my cast speculation video, that it's stupid for them to be doing a Heroes versus Villains season that is half newbie, half returnee. But we're not even getting that. There's 11 returnees. That makes no sense. Now, I know that supposedly it was going to be 12, and one of the returnees dropped out the last second, supposedly either Christy or Shane. And I guess it just looks like all the alternates were newbies, but that's just ridiculous. This is stupid. This is straight up dumb that we're actually doing this. But again, that's Australian Survivor for you. Again, doing a Heroes versus Villains, now classifying over half the cast of people that haven't played the game before as heroes or villains, and also not even properly getting half the cast of returnees. This is just stupid, really. And also, what are these returnees? I should also mention, adding to this mess, these announcement videos that were released are just really weird, really feeling like they were put together at the last second, where they constantly changed the format as they were revealed, where the initial ones were revealed by JLP. He was the voiceover for them. Then for some reason, midway through, they kind of changed it to not have JLP and instead just be the generic announcer guy. But then also there's one of the promos that didn't have the person's name on it either. And also considering the weird order of how they release people, where they really front loaded all the big names, which is the most Australian TV thing they could do. But that left a lot of no names at the very end, which was just really humorous. I don't know what they were doing with these reveals, but again, really this entire thing is just really bizarre production decisions here. That really just feels like production grasping at straws, put something together to try to get its audience back, but I really don't feel like this is going to work. But again, I could be wrong. Now, the way I'm going to structure this video is I'm going to talk about the newbies first, then talk about the returnees later. Let's start running through newbies. Again, alphabetical order based on first name. And we're going to be starting it off with Anjali Rao, who is a villain. And she is someone that I believe was on The Real Housewives of Melbourne, but is also a journalist outside that. And she really feels like someone that could go either way for me. She is on the older side of the cast, and considering her villain nature, I guess, I don't know if she's going to be able to play up that motherly figure, where my initial instinct was that she was going to be someone like a Chrissy, maybe, which, through that, again, could be an early boot, potentially, could initially be on the outs, but if they're able to become, the mother of their tribe, then maybe it could be in it for the long haul. But also, at the same time, I feel like that's a role that is very rarely going to win. Now, Chrissy did have a winning scenario, but I don't have high hopes for Anjali here. I think she's probably going to be a relatively early boot. Next up, moving on to Benjamin Law, who is an author on the Heroes tribe for some reason. And I actually feel pretty good about Benjamin here. I could definitely see a lot of upside for Benjamin. I could see him being someone that could kind of go under the radar on the Heroes tribe, especially considering all the bigger, potentially more alpha figures on that tribe, like a David or a Sean. I feel like Benjamin could probably skate on by through that, but also I can see him being a bit of an outsider to where he might be in danger early on, though he is also a fan of the game, and considering he's on the Heroes tribe, which I'm expecting to win a lot of challenges, I do feel pretty good about him. That's why I still have him as a winner pick candidate for me. Next up, we're moving on to David Zaharakis, which I loved listening to JLP say his name over and over again. And David is a former AFL player, obviously a archetype we've seen many times on Australian Survivor. And again, it can go one of two ways. He can be in the mold of like a Simon Black, of just being really boring and not knowing what he's doing and just following along until he's eventually booted. Or he can be a Matt Rogers and take control of his tribe and be this really alpha figure. Either way, I don't look at him as a very likely winner. Now, he's a fan of the show, so I am expecting him to be more in the Matt Rogers side of things, but either way, I feel like David is someone that is probably going to struggle in this game, especially deep into the game, where out of the newbies here, he clearly comes off as the most physical, to where he just seems like a prime merge boot. Though at the same time, I mean, we have seen in Blood vs. Water that the men did come together to counter that notion, though considering the vets being part of this combination here, I don't really see that ideal fully forming together, though David, again, like, is someone that I do think will probably have longevity. I'll be surprised if he's an early boot, especially considering he's pretty young for one of these former sports stars at 32. Like, I do think he is probably in it for the long haul, but again, I don't really see him winning this game. Next up, moving on to Frasier, who is actually, for some reason, the last person they revealed. Again, this person that no one knows. Like, I believe this is one of the few more normal people on the cast where not much information is really out there about him. He is a real estate manager. He is on the Villains tribe. And I mean, he looks really schemy. I mean, I feel like Frasier's the type of person that I would not trust when out there. Mind you, he is on the tribe with George, who is the exact same thing, which also kind of makes it weird that, yeah, they are on the same tribe. Like, they do feel like very similar archetype-wise. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and like Frasier's this massive guy in comparison to George, but I mean, they seem pretty similar. But I mean, like, overall, he does come off as very schemy. Not someone I'm expecting to do that well here. Next up, moving on to Jerry Gouch, who is this pilot who, I guess, survived the plane crash. Along with that, he is also, I believe, the oldest person on this cast at 62, and really, I don't see Jerry doing too well here. Australian Survivor is a show that has become so much reliant on physical strength, and Jerry being the oldest there obviously doesn't help with his perception there. Also, beyond that, I do feel like Jerry doesn't come off as someone that I expect to be playing that aggressively, where I am fully expecting Jerry to be a relatively early boot, though if he does somehow make it to the merge, at that point he's obviously in it for the long haul. Though the question is, like, can he win at that point? Will a jury reward him with the win, especially a jury with returning players, which I don't feel like would give us this like Shane Gould-esque win over a Shawnee. So because of that, I feel like Jerry is someone that will need to surprise me in terms of his overall level of game ability, but I'm not expecting him to do too well here. Next up, we get one of the most questionable decisions to me in terms of hero or villain. Here we're moving on to Liz, who is a villain despite being an Olympic pole vaulter, which is very strange. Now, I know that supposedly there was a controversy surrounding her, where she was like eliminated from the qualifiers in like some sort of weird circumstance. But again, nothing I've seen here actually warrants her being a villain. Like, it feels weird to classify her as a villain here, but really it feels like a choice made because the Villains tribe needed more physical strength, which I will say just offhand, the Heroes tribe does feel pretty stacked in terms of physical strength. So I do think this definitely was something to kind of even the scales a bit. And Liz is someone that I can actually see kind of doing well here. Now, again, she isn't going to be on the Villains tribe, and to me on the offset, like, she feels like a bit of an outlier on the Villains tribe, especially from like reputation, where like everyone else is in a field that is known for duplicity or being cutthroat, while again, like, Liz is just an Olympic pole vaulter. And while that might seem bad, that might mean that she's an outcast, I actually think it means that she's probably going to be looked at as one of the more trustworthy figures within the Villains group. Also, Liz kind of just fits into the type of archetype that I would expect to do well in Australian Survivor, though I do worry about how much game ability there really is there. Like, while I do think she for sure has a deep run in her, I don't know if she has the game ability to navigate through the end game, especially when she will start to become a bigger threat due to her physicality. But on paper, I do feel like she is a pretty good pick here and definitely going to be someone that I'm moving on as a winner candidate. Next up, moving on to Matt Sharp on the Heroes tribe, a lifeguard, and again, like, he is one of the more normal people on this cast, though I believe he is very young. And to me, right away, he instantly comes off as someone like a Jesse from last season, who, again, like, couldn't be a good player. I think Matt, if he knows the game, can potentially play a pretty strong game. However, I do feel like there's probably still going to be a level of naivety to him that will lead to him getting outplayed, especially when we have all these other vets around him that while, again, some of the choices there are questionable and are questionable players, I do feel like the level of gameplay on this season should be elevated from a normal season. And Matt is someone that I'm not sure if I see him being able to adjust to that. So again, not someone I'm looking at too highly, but someone I could definitely see making a deep run. Next up, moving on to Michael Warren, a journalist. Again, another one of the more normal people, it seems like here. And another person that doesn't seem to be this person with a claim to fame, though. And Michael is someone here that instantly comes off as pretty schemy to me. He kind of reminds me of a David Sampson to a degree, just based on archetype. Plus, also, on the Villains Tribe, I'm actually anticipating the vets to probably come together there, considering the vets only have even numbers on the Villains Tribe. I do think the Villains Tribe probably have the vets sticking together, and through that, I think Michael seems like someone I could definitely see being an early target, seeming to also be one of the older guys on the cast. Again, I'm not really feeling too good about Michael. Next up, we got Mimi Tang, a luxury car PR owner, and Mimi is someone that I could really see going either way. I could see her playing too aggressively early on and getting taken out pretty early, or I could see her finding her spot on the tribe and potentially making a deep run, and she'd probably be a threat to win at that point. Though, I will say as a whole, I do feel kind of worried about Mimi, mostly because, again, I am expecting the vets to come together on this tribe, and we're looking at the newbies on this tribe. Like, if I'm picking out a first boot, I feel like I would pick out either Michael or Mimi here. Maybe a person we'll talk about a bit later, but I do think Mimi is someone that will probably be in danger early on. But I think there is a level of potential there, but again, not enough for me to put much faith into her. Next up, we're moving back to the Heroes Tribe, and here we do have Paige, an Outback Gillaroo, which I believe is just a farmer, right? And I mean, Paige is like somewhat of an archetype that we've seen numerous times, I feel like, across Australian reality TV. It's like kind of country girl that's kind of going out of her depths and really doesn't end up being the best socially. Like, I think Paige could really go, again, a number of ways here. I could definitely see Paige being one of the first few boots on the board. I think that's a somewhat likely outcome, though, considering the newbies do have the numbers on the Heroes Tribe. I think that could help Paige out there, though, based on the way she's talking in her bio, it does seem like she's wanting to play this honorable, make friends sort of game, and I don't think that's going to work out too well for her. So again, not looking at her too highly. Next up, keeping with the Heroes Tribe, we do have Rogue Rubin, who I feel like I know very little about her outside the fact that she is this wildlife film director. Is another probably high variance player. I feel like I could see Rogue being a relatively early boot, or can be a player that makes it pretty far. I don't really get a great sense of how physical she can be. Like, I don't know if she's going to be a physical asset for her tribe, in which that case I would feel pretty good about her. But without that knowledge, I do feel a bit more perplexed on where exactly to assess Rogue. She doesn't scream out to me as someone that would know the game in and out. I decided to not consider her as a winner contender. Next, I'm moving back to the Villains Tribe, and here we do have Sarah, who is a pageant girl, and at first you would think, okay, why is this person as a villain? Though I do feel like once you look into it, again, at least this one feels a bit more justified. Where supposedly she was known for trying to sabotage her fellow contestants, and I think Sarah could be pretty interesting on this season, again, if she is this very cutthroat player that seemed to indicate, though I feel like Sarah is also a very likely early boot. I feel like she kind of fits in line with these more generic earlier boots on Australian Survivor, especially towards like the middle merge phase of the game. Though again, if that cutthroat nature is there, though, I do feel like she could be interesting TV at least. And if she does make a deep run, maybe she could pull out all the stops. Though I feel like she's also someone that I'm not looking at as a very likely winner, mostly in the fact that she is one of the youngest people on the cast here in what is a relatively old cast. And through that, I feel like, considering she's only 23, I feel like that's also another thing to call out here of her probably going to be struggling to get respect from her fellow players. So because that, not someone I'm looking at as a winner candidate. And finally, we are at the last newbie on the board here, a very interesting one here, and that is Shawnee Vincent, who is an actress and someone that I'd actually heard of. So that's something. Where I believe she is most known for Home and Away, which is this Australian soap opera, but I had known her from movies like You're Next and Patrick, and Charney should be interesting here. She just feels like someone that fits the stereotypical Australian Survivor winner. feeling in line with someone like a Pia Miranda in terms of her archetype, but also seems to be more physical than someone like a Pia. I feel like on paper, Charney feels like a very perfect Australian Survivor winner candidate. My biggest reservation is the fact that I don't know about how big of a fan she is. That's something about Pia that really put Pia over the top for me and making her my winner pick at the time, was the fact that she was also this big Survivor super fan, where we really don't know that about Charney, and because of that, I have reservations, though she's definitely someone that I am considering as a potential winner pick. But there we go. I mean, that is all the newbies. Now let's get to the vets, which straight up, might as well talk about this now. I don't know how good I feel about the vets as a whole here, where I feel like we've gotten to the point in reality TV history where if there is a half and half season, I do feel like most of the newbies are going to stick together to try to take out the vets. I feel like the paradigm shift has started to occur where we see this in something like Edge of Extinction. We saw this almost happen in BB Can 5. We literally just almost saw this on Big Brother Australia. We have seen on recent reality TV where the newbies do finally get together to try to take out the vets. And because I'm not feeling great about the vets as a whole, especially because they are already outnumbered, though this is Australian Survivor. And I feel like out of any of the shows, if that trend weren't to continue, it would be Australian Survivor. I mean, we literally had last season Mark win as one of the only returnees on the board. So again, like, I feel like that's not necessarily going to be the case, though I do feel like with a lot of these returnees in particular, I don't feel too great about a lot of them on the return. Let's still run through them. Again, alphabetical order by first name, which I guess has us starting with Flick, who again is on the Heroes tribe. Again, obviously a third placer from Brains versus Brawn, someone that I fully expected to be back here. And I don't know about Flick. I mean, Flick could do well. I think Flick is the type of person that is almost always going to go far on a season of Survivor. I mean, she's just very affable. She's physical enough. She just has no real flaws in terms of the early game, outside the fact that she's probably not the most dynamic player in the world, which might leave her a bit outclassed here, especially when, again, we're on the Heroes tribe that is already 7 newbies, 5 vets. I feel like that is obviously a disadvantage for Flick. But I feel like out of any of the 3 women here, I would probably have the most faith in Flick to be able to survive a pagonging of the vets here. I just feel like she just kind of perfectly fits in with this Heroes tribe, and I'm just a bit unsure on her killer instinct. Like, I don't know if she's really learned anything since her last appearance, but out of any of the vets here, I feel like she's the person that I would probably have the most faith in to make it deep in the season, and because that she's still a winner pick candidate for me. Next up, we're moving on to George, and I will say, like, coming into any given All-Star season, I would have expected George to be screwed. I think George is the type of person that is just so primed to be an early boot the next time he plays, and came in second place his first time around, played a pretty impressive game at that, but very much feels like in line with this like Rob Cesternino or Yao Man or Tonys of the world, like these people that are going to just have such massive targets when they return and be taken out right away. I feel like George is very much in line with that. However, I feel like if there was ever a situation where George would actually be decently positioned on a returning season, this is it. Again, he's on a tribe of villains with 5 other returnees in a position where this side has a 50-50 split while the other side doesn't. And I just feel like that's probably going to further bond the vets on this side, as I feel like they're going to think that they need each other a lot more. And because I feel like that is a decent position for George, however, he is still George, and I have no faith in George to not blow up his game at some point. But again, I thought that last time, and he still made it to the end. But I'm still not feeling great about George. I think he has probably the biggest target on his back coming into this season. So not a winner candidate for me. Next up, the direct counter to George, we have Haley. Obviously, the winner of Brains vs. Brawn, the only winner on this cast, which I will say, why is she here? Because, obviously, they wanted her back at some point. She said yes, no issues there, but, why did they want her for a random heroes versus villains season? That just seems so weird to me. Though I will say, I do find it interesting that George and Haley are the 2 on the poster, that they are the 2 heads of this season, which is a curious choice to me, considering, again, I feel like they're the 2 people that have the biggest targets on their backs. And Haley, for me, again, the only winner on this cast, but even beyond that, is just such a well-rounded player. I think she demonstrated through her first season, even though she did get voted out at one point, that she is one of the most well-rounded players in the history of not even just Australian Survivor, but just Survivor in general. And really, because of that, I don't actually expect Haley to be an early boot here. Now, again, if this just does become a simple pagonging of all the vets on the Heroes tribe, then yeah, she's probably going to go out in that position. But I think if she's able to avoid that, I could definitely see Haley still making a somewhat deep run. I think to me, the biggest comparison here with Haley and how I expect her run to go is probably someone like a Kim Spradlin in Winners at War, where again, both came off as extremely impressive players the first time around, to the point where they had these targets on the return, but still were able to persevere despite having that target on their back. And again, I do think Haley's probably someone that is going to be on the bottom a lot more on this season. I'm not expecting her to have that much control across this season, but I could definitely still see her making a somewhat deep run on this season. However, I do feel like her path to the end is still very, very tough. I feel like the only way for her to actually get there is if she just wins out, which I don't think is going to happen here. So I don't think Haley is in it to win the game, though I do think she could still potentially make a deep run and probably also bolster her legacy along the way, and through that potentially overtake David as my number one player in Australian Survivor. So we'll see how that goes. Next up, we're finally talking about one of the more questionable picks for a return here, and that person is Jackie, who is on the Villains tribe. And I mean, I even mentioned this in my cast speculation video that I do feel like Australian Survivor struggles with female villains. I didn't feel like there were that many female villains, so I assumed that for the female villains that there were going to be some weird picks. And again, Jackie is one of those. Mind you, I don't mind it. I mean, Jackie is a big fan of the show. I know she is still present in the community doing podcasts. Like, she is still around, and because I'm completely fine with the Jackie return, though it still doesn't change the fact that it is a really random pick. Again, this is the 15th place finisher from season 3 when we're at season 8 at this point. Again, that just feels weird. But really, it's like she does feel like the type of person that they would cast for the season even without the returning players. She is a professional poker player, like that obviously fits into this villainous theme. So again, it makes sense that she's here. Though I also do find it funny that I don't believe they ever mentioned that she is a returning player in her intro, where it seems like they're trying to introduce her as if she's a new player, which I found that kind of funny. But Jackie's someone that, again, I think the potential is there. I think she definitely has a good strategic mind for the game. I think her issue is finding her footing in the game. Again, the first time around, we just saw her very much struggle to really form any sort of relationships. Mind you, she was this more cutthroat strategic player on the Group of Champions, which had the likes of Matt Rogers and Moana kind of running things. So Jackie's obviously directly opposed to that. So again, like, she is on the Villains tribe now. I feel like that should benefit her a lot more. However, I do still feel like there's this worry of her still being a potential early boot just due to the nature of her archetype, though I do think if she makes it deep into the game, I would expect her to be playing pretty aggressively when she gets to the merge. I feel like that could be really interesting to watch, but I still feel like those worries are there early on, so she's not someone I'm picking as a winner pick. Next up, we got Jordy, and I mean, Jordy was a lock for this season. I think there was no way that Jordy was not going to be on the season, and with that, I do not expect Jordy to do well on this season. I mean, Jordy is essentially the new hotness right now. He is the person that was one of the big stars of just the last season. And I think because that he is also coming into the season with a massive target on his back, though kind of in an unwarranted way, as opposed to like Haley and George, who both actually came off as good players on their seasons. Jordy didn't, and he's still coming into this with a big target on his back. I don't think Jordy is particularly long for this game. Now, I think there is a way he can probably squeeze his way to the merge, especially if the vets stick together, though I think that's about as far as he gets. And even that in itself is probably being generous. I think probably around the swap is probably around where I would expect Jordy to go. I just feel like there's no reason for most people to trust him here. I think they just saw him on Blood vs. Water, and while he was portrayed as an underdog at points, he also was portrayed as someone ratting out his own allies. So again, just overall not expecting him to do well here. But we're going to counter that with someone that I am very interested in seeing on the return from the same season, and that is Nina Twine. And Nina is someone that I am a bit unsure on how exactly I expect her run to go here. Where, I mean, truth be told, again, the first time around, I didn't expect her run to go well there. Even though I did see this potential of her being a good player, I just didn't think they would allow her to play her game on Australian Survivor. However, they did, and she did a very good job integrating herself within this all guys alliance, and it seemed like Nina was poised to make a deep run on that season had she not been medevac. The question is, can she do that again? Can she do that again on this season? And again, I don't know, and I just really worry in the sense that, again, like, I do really want Nina to do well, and I definitely feel like she has the skills to do well. However, the fact that she's the only American on this cast, I feel like that is something that, again, can be a good thing or a bad thing. I think it could be bad in the sense that obviously, like, there could be this national pride sort of sentiment of not wanting an American to win the game, but also I feel like it could be good in the sense that it would make the others more interested in getting to know her and learning from her different background. And I feel like Nina definitely has the ability to win this game here, and is probably one of the vets that I'm the most confident in here, despite my worry about her starting position. However, I just feel like it's a tough thing to see Nina winning Australian Survivor. So really, again, I do have high hopes for Nina, but I do feel like there's enough downsides there to where she's not a winner candidate for me. Next up, moving on to someone that I cannot believe this person's playing Survivor again. It's like, really, it's like out of all the people in an Australian Survivor that you could have cast, you cast Sam Webb. Now, I will say, at the end of the day, he does perfectly fit the Heroes tribe, being all about mateship and also being this charity owner. And again, it makes sense on paper why he's on the Heroes tribe. But who wanted to see Sam Webb play Survivor again? Again, of all the people from season 1 of the show, Sam Webb is the person we're bringing back. But that being said, I could see it going well for Sam here. I think out of any of the male returnees here, I think Sam Webb is the one that's the most poised for a deep run. I think Sam is probably the one that I could see bonding the most with these other hero guys and kind of broing down with them, but also really don't see anyone targeting him because of his former game or anyone being like that worried about him in the game. I actually feel like Sam Webb is probably one of the people that I feel the best about, especially from the vet side of things. But again, it's really weird that a lot of these people that I feel good about are heroes when the heroes are outnumbered. And I feel like that is still a worry, though I feel like Sam is someone that I just don't think is coming in with a target on his back. And I do question, again, has he learned from his first time around? I mean, has he watched more than just Celebrity Survivor Vanuatu? I don't know. And again, even if he has, I'm still not looking at Sam as that great of a player. Next, I'm moving on to the last hero on the board here. We're moving on to Sean from Champions vs. Contenders 2. And yeah, I mean, I fully expect this. Again, if he said yes, I didn't think it was that big of a surprise that he was going to be on here. Considering the fact that, again, they wanted him for All-Stars, he had to say no. I'm pretty sure they wanted him for Blood vs. Water. I think he said no, probably. So again, the fact that he's finally back, not a surprise. Again, hero or villain, I guess hero just because he's not a villain. Again, like he is looked at as this big challenge beast, and I guess that's enough to be a hero. Like really, I think Sean here, I think he's going to play the same. I think it's going to be the exact same thing. I think he's probably going to be in this leadership position on the Heroes tribe. I think the interesting thing is going to come from the fact that, again, he is technically in the minority for being a vet. So I do wonder if he's going to be able to overcome that. However, I think at the end of the day, even if he is, I don't think he's making it much past the merge. I think he is just someone that's so primed to be taken out in the first few rounds of the merge. I just do not have much faith in him to really overcome that, even though I do think he is a savvy player. I do think he demonstrated a lot of great game ability his first time around. It's just that I feel like that target on his back is just way too massive and way too blatantly there, considering how big of a physical threat he is, and because that did not consider Sean as a potential winner pick. And again, last up, we have 3 villains in a row here. First up, starting it off with Shawnee. And Shawnee ends up, surprisingly to me, being the only 3-time player on the board here. Weird that she's the first 3-time player in Australian Survivor history, but yeah, I don't mind it. I like Shawnee. I think she'll be fun here. Again, a villain. I know people quabbled with this of being upset that she was qualified as a villain. I think she's a villain. In the same way that like Courtney Yates is a villain, I think Shawnee perfectly fits the villain mold here. I think she's one of the few Australian Survivor women that I think kind of fit the villain tribe. And I will say Shawnee was my initial go-to person of who I was expecting to do well, where once we saw the cast, I was thinking, okay, Shawnee's there. I think she's someone that could be underestimated again, make a deep run again, potentially get to the end and win. However, I think through talking through it a bit more over my live streams and everything, I think I've kind of come down on the fact that I don't think Shawnee's probably going to do that well here. I think Shawnee's probably coming into this a bigger target on her back than I am anticipating. Or something about All-Stars that I kind of forgot about is this aspect of Shawnee being really propped up as being like the best social player Survivor has ever seen. And I feel like that's probably going to be her perception out there. And mixing down the fact that she's on the villain's tribe, I do feel like people are going to be constantly thinking about how good of a social player she is and probably want to target her because of that. So I will say I do kind of worry for Shawnee here, both in the fact that I think she could be an early boot, but even if she makes it far, I feel like her threat level is going to be higher than she can counter. But I am hoping I'm wrong because I would like to see Shawnee do very well in this season, but was enough of a question mark to where I didn't continue her as a winner pick here. Next up, moving on to Simon. And Simon is a very interesting case for me here. Where out of the villains here, I feel like Simon is probably the person that has the most most potential. Obviously, his first time around, Simon got extremely overconfident, got blindsided 2 idols in his pocket. I will say, I've listened to podcasts of him talking about the game after the fact, and it seems like he's learned his lesson. It seems like he has humbled himself. And considering the fact that he seems to know the game pretty well, I actually feel kind of good about Simon on the return here. I think he should be primed to do better than he did last time, at least. I do still worry, though, with Simon being in the archetype that he is, the fact that I think he is probably going to be targeted by the end of the game. I just find it very tough to believe he's going to find his way through to the end game unless he's able to bro down in the way that like Mark and Josh were able to last season. But again, I'm not really expecting that to be the case on this season. And while Simon is someone that I think has a lot of potential here, and I think he could potentially still win this game, he's not someone I'm looking at as a winner pick. And finally, the final returnee here is the one that everyone wanted. We have Steve from Champions for Contenders 2, aka the 4th boot of the season. And how did we get to this point? And like, why is he a villain? I mean, Steve is someone that, like, my interpretation of him was that he was this underdog figure and that he was going to be clearly on the hero tribe. But then we get the cast and it turns out he's a villain somehow. It's like, how did that happen? And I just love the announcement of it where like they're saying Survivor, sneakiest player. It's like, Steve is that person? Like, since when? Which I will also say, probably not the most PC thing to be saying about an Asian guy, but also again, like, when was that ever his reputation? Like, I mean, also, it's like, out of all the people, out of all the potential villains in Australian Survivor, especially from the guy's point of view, you pick Steve? Now, I assume a lot of the other bigger names turned it down, right? Like, I'm assuming the likes of, like, a Harry turned it down, a Nick turned it down, maybe a Khan, but, like, Steve? Like, it's just mind-blowing that they pick Steve over a lot of these other bigger names, where, again, there are so many male villains to potentially cast here. And the fact that Steve is one of the ones they went with is just so funny to me. Like, I mean, really for me, Steve here, it could go either way. I think it could go exactly the same. I think he could still be an early boot. But again, I think considering the fact that there are vets here, and I think they'll probably stick together, I think Steve could probably make a deep run. However, I don't think Steve can win this game. I'll be very surprised if Steve gets to the end and has the respect to win. I think his best case scenario is probably being someone like a Tarzan, kind of being looked at as like a loyal number towards the end of the game. And I can very much see him being like a 3rd place finisher at the end, but I don't think Steve really has it in him to play a great game. And again, it'll be funny if I'm wrong. Imagine Steve as a Survivor winner, but I think at the end of the day, again, not putting that much faith into him. But there we go. I mean, that is the entire cast of Australian Survivor heroes versus villains. Now let's get into my winner pick. So I have narrowed down to 4 people. We got 3 rookies in Benjamin, Liz, and Charney, while we have 1 vet in Flick. And I think right away, I'm just going to cut Flick. Again, while I do think Flick is probably the person I would have the most faith in longevity out of these vets here, I just don't know if she has the killer instinct. And really just in general, I just feel more confident with a newbie winning this season. I do feel like the vets are either not the best players in the world, have a big target on their back, or just fall victim to this new paradigm shift of the newbies fighting back to where I don't feel like this is going to be a season won by a vet. So with that, we are left with 3. And here I do think I'm going to cut Benjamin, largely because, I mean, obviously I think Australian Survivor has a certain archetype that I do think particularly does well. And really that archetype is who I would always pick from Australian Survivor, just solely looking at the cast. So while I do think Benjamin has some potential there, I just feel like the other 2 are more likely winners. And with that, we're left with the final 2 here in Liz and Shawnee. And again, I feel like these are 2 sides of the same coin. I feel like these are 2 players that are both in this typical Australian Survivor archetype of this athletic enough, social enough, strategic enough player that can potentially go under the radar and squeeze to the merge, but then also not be looked at as the biggest threat at the merge to where they should be able to get pretty close to the end. And both of these people fit into that archetype. So now the question for me is, which one do I end up picking as my winner pick? And here I am going to go with Charney. And the reason for this is a couple things. I think first thing, Liz, I think is more of a blatant physical threat. Again, she is an Olympic pole vaulter. So I do think that might catch up to her by the end game. But also, I think the biggest thing for me is this hero versus villain dynamic. I feel like knowing Australia as a culture and how prominent the concepts of mateship are, I do feel like a hero is just more likely to win than a villain. Now, at the end of the day, again, is Liz really a villain? No. And really, I do think that is why she's even in contention here, is because I do think Liz is the hero of the villain's tribe. But I just feel more inclined to go with the hero here. And again, also you can make those Pia parallels with Charney as well. That I just think at the end of the day, Charney just feels like the perfect pick for me. But there we go. I mean, that is my cast assessment / reaction for Australian Survivor heroes versus villains. Now, obviously, when the season starts, I will be doing my typical coverage of the season with the mid-season power ranking and then a review and player ranking after the season. Also, if you want to hear me talk about the season as the season is going on, follow me at Twitch at twitch.tv/TheMarine where every Wednesday and Sunday I talk about whatever is going on in the current world of reality TV, so I'll definitely be talking about Australian Survivor there. Also, we're nearing the end of the year, where this is my last normal-ish reality TV video of the year, where this Wednesday's video will be a video game video, and a week from today is the final video of the year, which will be my year in reality TV video, where I rank every reality TV season I've watched from the year of 2020, so stay tuned for that. But for now, that is the video. Thank you for watching.